Hey there, welcome to the garage. My name is Buck. I have Squib across from me.
Hello.
And today we're talking about one of my favorites, Squib. One of my favorite rifle models of all time,
One of
ever.
America's favorite rifles.
And I would say the Remington 700 is one of the most
Hmm
popular bolt action rifles. But before we get into that, let's start our episode with a little bit of catch up from last week. What's been going on, Squib? What have you got for us today?
A couple of new things went into the safe. A couple more PMags.
We love it when stuff goes into the safe.
Yeah, you don't like when stuff comes out.
No, no, I like them staying in the safe unless
Yeah.
I'm going shooting.
I think picked up I think four PMags. Loaded those up with some more Wolf steel case because I got another good deal on that. Couldn't help myself. Picked up another 200 rounds of 9 millimeter because you know me.
Jeez,
I
that's like
I
the
can't
third week
help
in a
it.
row you've got 9 mil
You'll see that just about every week I buy
with more
some
9
amount
mil.
of nine
Oh my
millimeter.
God.
Because when the prices are good where they're at right now,
Are you shooting any of it? Are you going to
yes,
the range?
yes, I haven't been to the range
Call you
in
out.
3 weeks. I'm going not this Sunday, but next Sunday because it depends on our class schedule when we have an open range that we
Yeah.
can go shoot on. So as long as we don't have class out there, I'll be going. So then made a little trip up to Rapid City, South Dakota. Stopped at First Stop Guns. It is a awesome gun
Shout out.
store. Oh, it's fantastic. If anybody's ever get up in Rapid City, go check it out. They have a huge selection, and I got to put my hands on a CZ75 compact that I'd been really thinking about buying. And luckily, had one in stock, let me handle it, and it feels great. So I think I'm gonna order one now.
Those that have been following the series knows that you're on the CZ kick right now.
Oh, heavily,
You're riding
heavily.
the wave.
Yeah. Now I will say I did just transfer a beautiful Beretta 92 for a gal last week in the shop, and it was a bronze barrel. It was just beautiful.
Interesting. Like
It
Cerakote?
Yeah, Cerakoted
Okay, yeah.
bronze, and it was beautiful.
Perfect.
Those Beretta 92s are just they're snazzy.
I
So
think if you find the right one, because I think the Beretta 92 got a bad reputation in the military because they were in forever.
yeah, and I hate that they have the bad reputation. You know, they're,
Yeah,
they're a great firearm. The reason the military has kind of knocked them is because they were shot for 80,000 rounds and used to hammer in tent stakes, and they were used as tools that they shouldn't have been for a long time. So of course they're going to jam once in a while.
the running joke with my dad, who has experience with the Beretta 92 in the military, is whenever you go into a gunsmithing shop and you hear like a pounding, I'll ask my dad, I was like, "You think that's a Beretta 92 they're using to hammer in something?"
Oh, absolutely, they definitely
And
are.
that's the running joke. I myself haven't shot one yet. I'd
Hmm
like to. A monkey could take one of those apart, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's kind of what I like about the 92 is
hmm
like you can have zero experience with a handgun and you can learn how to disassemble that firearm
In
in
5 minutes.
5 minutes or less, I'd
Yeah,
say. Very
absolutely.
few components, not very complicated.
Yep. Something I need to add to the armory here eventually, but we got some
Yeah,
other stuff on the list first.
yeah.
Outside of that, Buck, what did you get this week? Anything
So
cool?
I made a couple orders this weekend. I wanted to upgrade my AR buttstock because I built my lower and I put a regular old AR-15 buttstock on it.
Now, when you say regular old AR-15 butt stock, what do you
Mil
mean?
spec. I want
Like
to say mil
like the
spec.
A2s
No,
or
not the fixed. It was an
okay.
adjustable
Okay.
buttstock, but it was a standard adjustable that it's ugly. It doesn't fit well on most people's
Mhm.
shoulders. It's the first thing people usually upgrade because it's
Mhm.
a plastic backstop up against your shoulder,
Yep.
and so it's the first thing people usually upgrade. I upgraded my trigger because I built my lower, so I
Mhm.
put a better trigger in there first,
As you should.
as you should. I thought that that was more important to me than the stock at that point.
Mhm.
So I put a trigger in it, and I said, "Well, later down the road, I'll get a stock." And this weekend was the weekend.
Heck yeah.
So I have in front of me, for all you in the audience, I'd like you to give a comment if you can. I have in front of me an FAB AR stock. It holds a magazine under the whole stock assembly.
And there
Squib.
went half our listeners.
Well,
Just
and
kidding.
all two of them. But no, the FAB buttstock holds a 10 rounder, and it comes with the 10-round magazine.
Which big perks to that? I mean, if you're gonna sell something that holds a magazine,
You
include a
you might as well
magazine.
throw in a mag.
Yep.
Now, it's not a P mag or anything. It's their own brand of magazine, which I thought was going to be flimsy,
Mhm.
but it has anti-tilt follower. It does have a coated spring, which I don't know if there's any advantage to that
There is.
that's noticeable or not.
I think in 20 years that mag would still run,
Yeah,
as opposed to maybe another one that wouldn't.
and I did take it apart, as you should. If you're getting something like this that's not P mag
Mhm.
or something well known, take it apart and kind of get to know it.
Now, I will say on the quality of that mag, before I realized it wasn't a PMag, just looking at it, handling it, I'm like, oh, this is a small PMag.
Kind
Cool.
of looks like a P mag. Yeah, it looks
It's
like a P
solid
mag. Design
quality.
aspects of one. So I want the listeners that are listening to kind of comment. Do you think AR-15 buttstock that holds a 10 rounder? If you've ever seen a monopod, it kind of looks like that.
Mhm.
Do you think that's gimmicky? Do you think that's something that's just kind of like a circus clown AR-15?
I think it's going to depend on some listeners. Like
Yeah.
if they're shooters like you, where they do a lot of bench press shooting, and
Well,
whatnot.
and I
That'd be
wanted
great.
to kind of caveat that afterwards is I got it because my application with my AR-15 is mostly while I'm prone
Hmm.
or while I'm on the bench.
Right.
I take my AR coyote hunting a lot,
Mm.
prairie dog hunting. Most of it's stationary.
If I'm sitting in a blind with an AR for coyotes, I can definitely see that being nicer
Yeah.
than throwing one in my pocket.
Well, and in some cases, I can throw. This comes with a 10 rounder. It matches, I assume, with any magazine because it does. It goes on the mag catch
Hmm.
on the magazine, so it should be compatible.
Yeah, it looks like it would take a 20
Yeah,
or a 30, no
and
problem.
then that's the thing is if I can throw a 20 rounder in there and then not need a rear bag or not
Hmm.
need to use my own hand, which is another point of contact, which could make my reticle go
Hmm.
somewhere that's not the target, then I'm all for it. To act sort of as a monopod or a rear rest. And then if I end up needing the ammo in some case, I can deal then. But more often than not, I'll have one in the gun anyways, and then I'll single load if I really have to.
Right. I look forward to seeing how that kind of holds up and what it
I'll
feels
keep
like
you
shooting.
updated. It does come with shims to fit both military style buffer tubes and commercial style buffer tubes. They are different diameters. I thought that was a really nice touch.
It really is because I think a lot of people, maybe if you're building your first AR, you
Yes,
don't realize you have a
they
commercial or
they
a mil
don't
spec.
know what to look for. And honestly, I kind of took a gamble because I didn't know that it came with those.
Hmm.
So I was like, ah, well, we'll order it. And I have three AR-15s. It'll fit on one of my buffer
Right.
tubes. So I took a gamble there. But it does come with shims if you need it. Uh,
I like the recoil pad on the back. It's
yeah,
rubberized,
and
and
it's,
it
yep,
for the
rubberized like a tire.
for the listeners, it looks like a Goodyear tire tread flattened out, and
Yeah,
I mean that with the most respect because it looks very comfortable to shoot.
yeah. And those of you that, there's nothing more annoying than putting on a new buttstock on your buffer tube and then realizing you have it that's too big for the
Hmm.
buffer tube and it just rattles around on your gun.
Yeah.
Nothing more annoying than that.
Hmm.
So the shims I felt were a really good design aspect, which is one of the reasons why I think this was a very good purchase. $90,
Not bad.
and I
Not bad.
used it was through Cabela's. I used my Cabela's cash because I have Cabela's credit card,
Heck yeah.
and that's a good
As
way to
do
do it.
most shooters, I think. Or if you don't, you probably
You
should.
probably should.
Yeah.
Well, and get the credit card that you go to the most
Mm.
because I know a lot of Missouri friends go to Academy.
Mm.
Odd as it sounds,
Never been to an academy sports. Always wanted to.
it's surprising. I think is
Okay.
what Dick's Sporting Goods should have been.
Okay.
It's surprising. I like it, but Cabela's purchase. I have a Cabela's card because I buy so many guns from them.
Mhm.
Used gun library. That's my bread and butter. That was my kind of purchase for the weekend, and it arrived today, the day we're recording. So
I like it. I look
yeah,
forward to seeing that out on the range and seeing what it feels like.
yeah. So now that we're kind of through the intro, we can get into our actual subject for today, the Remington 700 Squib. And I cannot explain to you enough how
America's
excited I am.
bolt gun, the Remington 700.
And a lot of people are going to say that it was, but it's not anymore. But
I'd argue it
and
still
I
is.
well, and I have an argument that even the bolt guns that can be said are America's bolt gun right now borrow design aspects that were pioneered by the Remington 700.
It was definitely a pathfinder of a weapon. I mean, it paved the way for a lot of common things we see in that technology now.
And it's still a very romantic action and bolt gun for me.
Hmm.
So hopping into it, I mean, released in 1962, I didn't realize this bolt gun was that old.
I was surprised when we saw that it was released in '62. It would not have surprised me if it was older, but it also wouldn't have surprised me if it was newer.
Yeah,
I guess I was just kind of surprised that I'm like, oh, we were pre-Vietnam. Interesting. Okay.
yeah, and it is 60 years old. It's 61 to be exact,
Hmm.
and it was used in the Vietnam War to some capacity.
Right.
Now, I also want to tell our listeners we actually messed up last episode.
Whoops.
Yeah, which we probably are reading the comments. We're probably going to put it in the description too.
Hmm.
But Carlos Halfcock used a Winchester Model 70
And not a Remington
in
700.
Vietnam and not a 1903, like I said,
Right.
that maybe he used.
Marines are gonna crucify
Well,
us.
and I said maybe he used it, maybe he didn't. I hope he did, but I didn't know the story, and I didn't know we were going to talk about it that day.
Mm.
But,
To be fair, a lot of guys, especially snipers in that era, used a lot of different weapon
well,
platforms depending on
especially
what they were
Vietnam.
doing.
because Vietnam they used Winchester Model 70s, they used Remington 700s, and they did use 1903s
Hmm.
in Vietnam. They were a little more sparse,
Hmm.
a little less. You couldn't find as many because by then the Winchester Model 70, which came out I think in the late 40s, early 50s, I think early 50s. So it predated the 700. I'm pretty sure the Winchester 70 kind of just took
Hmm.
control in the sniper platform.
Did you know the 1903 is still used with one military unit in the U.S. today?
Which one?
The Alaskans. They have a
Really?
group of individuals who are trained that are Native Alaskans, as in from there, not Native Inuit Alaskans.
I love that.
And they use a 30-06 1903 Springfield. I just read the article on it yesterday, and some of those guns are 100+ years old now,
Yeah, and they
and they
still
are
shoot.
still running them.
Yeah, 30-06, great cartridge too.
Love it.
The Remington 700, though, it was released to shoot the 7.62 by 5.1 NATO cartridge originally.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And so 7.62 NATO being from 1954, and yes, that cartridge is that old. It kind of blows my mind.
No kidding.
Yeah, 1954, NATO adoption,
Still one of God's calibers.
and one of my favorites.
Hmm.
And I actually prefer the 7.62 NATO when I'm hand loading over the 308. The case is just a tad different on the internal dimensions.
Now,
Uh,
is 7.62 NATO? Excuse
yeah,
me here, Buck. Is
sure.
that like I can run 223 in my 5.56?
So on the 223 versus 5.56, they say that your 5.56 chambering can shoot both.
Yes. Yep. Now,
On
can 7.62
308,
NATOs do that?
it's the other way around. It's your 308 chambering that can shoot both NATO and 308.
Okay. Good to
Yes.
know.
And I know that's the rule. Having hand loaded for both, whenever I have a recipe for 308 and I want to load it in 7.62 by 51, I back the grain charge uh, by 2 grains. Subtract 2 grains from the overall recipe, and I can load that into NATO and put it in the gun and run
Okay.
because the pressures run a little hotter in NATO.
Sure.
Um, Granted, a lot of bolt guns don't even chamber in NATO, 7.62 NATO.
Okay.
They only chamber in 308, and you'll see this with most bolt guns. It'll just be 308. I don't think I've ever seen a bolt gun chambered for 7.62 by 5.1 NATO.
I've seen so few.
You see them in semi-automatic rifles
Yes.
like the G3, the FAL,
Mhm.
some good examples.
I think some Springfield M1As.
The M1A, I was just about to say, those are chambered in NATO. But those systems you kind of have to watch, depending on the age of the rifle and the gas system, to see what kind of pressures can you run in the gun.
Gotcha. See, listeners, I'm learning along with you.
Yeah. So the Remington 700 originally released to shoot the 7.62 NATO, and then in the military application, they were also chambered in 300 Win Mag, which I will say, Squid, that is 100%. And I'll reveal this for everyone. That is my favorite cartridge.
Hmm.
Period.
It's tough to not love it.
It's exciting to shoot. That I actually have a Remington 700 in 300 Win Mag. I've hit 1,000 yards with it. It's braked so it shoots with the same recoil as a 308,
Very
if not
nice.
less. I
Okay.
love that gun. So it's kind of ironic that we're talking. That was the second kind of bigger cartridge that the military adopted to
Hmm.
chamber that rifle in.
Hmm.
On the commercial side of things, you can choose just about any cartridge in a hand loading book. The Remington 700 was chambered in that cartridge, most likely.
Hmm.
Even the oddballs.
I have one on the shelf right now. That's a 7.08, which I know is fairly common in some areas of this country, but out here in Nebraska, no.
It's
We
a great
It's a
cartridge.
great cartridge, but I
Yes,
can't think of anybody out here that I know that shoots
lot of
7.08.
708. Where my family's from originally, Pennsylvania, that's a popular cartridge,
Gotcha.
708. But so it was popular for wildcatting as well, which might be a new term for some of our listeners. For those of you listening, wildcatting is when you take a commercial cartridge, something that's loaded by most ammo manufacturers, and you fiddle with the case. You neck it down, neck it up to a different bullet diameter. You change the case dimensions into something that's not commercially loaded. So, in that sense, you have to have a custom die set. In order to shoot it in a gun, you have to kind of wildcat a gun as you wildcat a cartridge. A good example of this, the 22-250, which is commercialized now.
Hmm.
Back in the day, it was not. So, parent cartridge was 250 Savage, which is an old older cartridge. I won't say ancient because it's not ancient. It is old though. 250 Savage, which puts it in the same cartridge family as the 308, and they nicked it down to 22 caliber. And they ran with 22 250 until it got so popular that Browning Arms Company commercialized it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, and
John
so
Moses Browning be proud.
yes, and I think that was a great move too. So the 22 250 was so popular. Browning started making guns before the cartridge was even commercialized too. They were the only ones to do that. So they took the 250 Savage, they necked down the cartridge to 22 bullet, and they kept it 22 as the bullet diameter, 250 for the parent case. Very popular cartridge, very big varminter. It honestly competed with the 220 Swift, which
Mm-hmm.
is the fastest 22 caliber
The
on the
amount of
market right
22
now
250s we have out here in western Nebraska is nuts.
in Prairie Dog Land,
Oh yeah, prairie
Coyote
dog land.
Land.
Even. I mean, my grandfather has
Really?
shot. Oh yeah, my grandfather's quote unquote his tack driver, as he refers it to.
Yeah,
Uh, boy, what is it? I want to say it's like a Remington. It's not a 700, but it's like a 721 or something like that. I'm gonna butcher that number.
783.
Something like that,
They
but
made a
it's
lot
in
of
it's
budget
in 22
rifles.
250, and that
Yeah,
is a. I mean, I've shot that rifle since I was a kid, and it
yeah,
is just a walloping little fast round.
yeah. And so the 220 Swift was one of the first 22s to break 4,000 feet per second, which is cooking.
Hmm.
22 250 can do it too. So while that was a wildcatting example, other wildcatting examples are definitely applicable in the Remington 700, and it was the standard. What I would consider the golden age for wildcatting would be probably the end of World War II. Folks coming back from war, all they have is their battle rifle, and your choices were really 30-06 in your battle rifle.
Hmm.
Maybe you have a bring back that's 8 Mauser,
Hmm.
7 Mauser, 6.5 Carcano,
Or God forbid you brought back some Japanese era socka and you're trying
some
to find
Type
that ammo.
99.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
my buddy's got a lamp made out of a Type 99.
I bet some people do because you could
Mm,
probably buy them for the same amount as a
yeah,
lamp.
I won't say his name, but shout out to Caveman. He knows exactly where that lamp is, and that is one snazzy house decoration and one
Yeah.
cool war trophy.
So, you take the barrel off of your action and you put something snazzy on there, something that's not well known and something that works really well. And so from the late 40s, I'd say up until, oh gosh, 70s and 80s, you're getting a lot of really nice cartridges. But at some point, they stopped using World War actions and Winchester Model 70s, Remington Model 700s, Ruger M77s. Those were probably the big three non-military. Well, I can't say that because they use the Winchester
Mhm.
70 and the 700, I guess. But they rebarreled all of them.
It's kind of the golden age of home gunsmithing.
I would say so, and
W
it's something that I wish I was there for.
You do that stuff now, you get it on a list.
Well, not exactly, but you do that stuff now, and you're paying 4 times what they were paying back then, even when
Absolutely.
you account for inflation.
Mhm.
A Remington 700 action right now is $550.
Yeah, I've never had one come through the shop under, I want to say, under the $800
Yeah.
number, and that was for a used one that had obviously had some wear and tear on it.
So building right now is not the most economical for bolt guns. It was back then.
Hmm.
You can get it for cheap, you can build for cheap, and you had a lot of people that went into machining, both in the Great Depression and afterwards.
Hmm.
That was a booming kind of job back then because everyone was making everything in America still.
Hmm.
So you had a lot of machinists cranking out barrels for all kinds of weird stuff. A really good example that I know my dad's going to love that I used this example 17 Mach 4.
Sounds like an airplane book.
17 Mach 4. That's a crazy, awesome name.
That sounds like something Tom Cruise would shoot and or fly.
Yes, and it was later commercialized into the 17 Remington Fireball,
Okay.
which is probably the best follow up you could do by not calling it the Mach 4. If you can't call it the Mach 4, you have to
Yeah.
follow that up.
Give it up something fast, you
At
know.
least it was 17 Remington Fireball, and that's a good name too.
Hmm.
So that's a high stepping round. Many a Remington 700 chambered in those either by local gunsmiths. I think Remington did chamber it in that since they commercialized the cartridge. But some of the designs that we're getting into, uh, It was the go-to receiver for gun builders. Some of the aspects of that receiver that were they were new at the time. Got to think we're in 1960s. Most of what's on the market, Winchester Model 70s and World War actions.
Hmm.
Most World War actions used, actually, in the Winchester Model 70 before 1964, they used Mauser claw extractors, which also, respectively, led to control feed rifles. Now, control feed means that as soon as you put the bolt forward, the bolt controls the feeding of the cartridge from the magazine all the way into the barrel. Remington 700 is a push feed rifle, which means just send the bolt home. You don't have to have the cartridge in the magazine because it's not guiding it from the magazine.
Hmm.
You just have to get it in the port, and it'll put it in the barrel.
Stick it in the hole so it goes bang.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And so, with that feeding system, the Remington 700 utilized a plunger ejection system, which you see now in AR-15s. And then post 64 Winchester Model 70s, they switched over to a plunger ejection system. I think they still make them in Mauser claw extractor types in the 70s, only because people complained about the quality of the Winchester Model 70s after 1964. So hopefully we're still following along here because that was a lot of information to kind of dump. But those are kind of some of the design aspects. The differences with the Remington 700. I think you make something simpler in that time and age. No wonder it caught on
Hmm.
because with push feed, you kind of eliminated the need for you to have good seating in the magazine. Because control feed, you have to feed from the magazine, or else you can risk snapping your extractor, which is something that a lot of people didn't want to risk. So you eliminate that risk, and I'm not surprised the Remington 700 took on. And I would say Winchester Model 70 took their post 64 Winchester Model 70s. I'm sure they took some design aspects from the 700 since it was seeing such rapid success.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So some of the design aspects that were borrowed from the 700 into some of the actions that you see today. And this comes back to it was America's bolt action rifle. There's no doubt. Can't say otherwise. Other people will argue Winchester Model 70. I'll always argue Remington 700.
Hmm.
Uh,
Well, you're definitely placed your tent in one camp versus the other.
I have.
I would love to play devil's advocate here and tell you that I have Winchester Model 70 and 300 Win Mag. I don't yet,
Yet.
but I think I'm going to, just kind of in spite of you
But you
almost.
know why I love pitching my tent in Remington Field? Because I can afford them.
That's fair.
A lot of people, and I think it's not a bad thing. If
Hmm.
you are barriered by money, that's okay. But
Hmm.
Winchester Model 70s are usually kind of the Cadillac. If you have the money to splurge on a very, very nice hunting rifle, Winchester Model 70, it's tough to beat.
We had a Model 70 338 Win Mag on the shelf for a while,
Oh,
and
great cartridge.
I'll tell you what, if I needed to go hunt some elk or some buffalo or something, I'd be all
Moose,
over it.
bear,
Yeah.
or a whole trip to Alaska.
Mm.
So we saw a lot of companies. So Remington got their pantsuit off, essentially.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of companies come out with their own receivers, borrowing design aspects from the Remington 700 because they got their pantsuit off. I won't even go into that whole train wreck. We will later in the episode, but not right now. But some of these actions that we're seeing, Defiance actions, custom. Zermatt, Terminus actions, also custom. They're custom quality, and I put up
Hmm.
air quotations right there. Some of the more commercial side of things that actually are pumping out full rifles, Regara, borrowed aspects from the 700. Howa, also, borrowed some of those. I would say Savage, also. I mean, it's impossible not to look at a rifle and find some sort of aspect from the 700 that they pioneered that the other company borrowed.
Right. Just kind of like America, well, the world kind of copied Mauser after World War II.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's just how technology in the gun market works. I mean, something good happens, everybody's like, okay, I want the good stuff because our customers want the good stuff.
Yeah, you look at the extractor on a 1903 versus a Mauser rifle, and they're both a Mauser claw extractor style. And similarly, you look at a Remington 700, and then you look at a Bergara or a Howa mini action. I was just looking at those today, plunger style extractor. And so That's kind of a common occurrence, it seems, every couple hundred years or so. Um, but a big question people ask is with those custom actions, because we did list off three custom machinists that make these actions. What are you really getting? Because these actions, if you decide to go custom squib, they're about $1,000 starting price.
Yeah, it's sometimes that's the tough sell to make for somebody that's like, okay, I have $800 to go buy what I think is going to be a quality rifle. Why do I need to take the next step up? So I guess Buck, what are people really gaining out of that?
So I guess some people would say a smoother bolt, which I will validate that aspect of things. A smoother rifle is just nicer.
Mhm.
And if you're going custom, you're going for a nicer rifle. So smoother bolt operation, I would say, is a big part of things. The bolt lift, especially after you've set off a round. Savage is known for having an extremely heavy bolt lift. So if you wanted something that's a little easier to work and manipulate, custom option would be a good choice. This comes back to Remington's quality control. It was suffering. I think the years were like 2004 to like 2012 or 2016 or something. But when you get a custom action, you can kind of purchase and feel better knowing, okay, if I'm going to spend $1,000 on just an action, it's going to go through a couple of quality checks. I can pay for that and feel comfortable that it's going to go through QC,
Mm.
they call it. You can also get some really fancy options. I say really fancy, bolt fluting.
It's almost becoming a little more common on the main market
It
now, on the
is.
commercial market. I mean, we're seeing that more and more as an option. I mean, if I go to one of my distributors and I'm looking for a rifle for somebody in a certain caliber, 30% chance I have the option to get them either a fluted bolt or a fluted barrel. You know, those are just becoming more commercially available to the market.
I noticed it first with the Franke Momentum.
Hmm.
They released their rifle a while ago, the Momentum. Franke was known for their shotguns, and then they came out with the Momentum, their first bolt rifle, and they featured spiraled bolt bodies. Some of these custom Remington, not Remington, but these custom 700 pattern receivers have spiraled bolt handles.
Which is just a sexy look on a
It's
rifle.
it's nice.
It's awesome.
I don't think I would ever go there. Maybe I don't
I'd go there
know.
for the cool
If I
factor.
had all the money in the world, I
Yeah,
would.
that's like cool factor.
But really, it's the design aspects. Again, you're going custom, so you're buying something that's nicer. That's the general rule of things. So it's going to work like glass more so than a traditional Remington 700. It's not that the traditional 700 isn't glass. It's just, you're going to see a step up and it's going to be noticeable. So that's kind of the general rule if you're buying custom actions, you know, generally. But unless you got any more questions, Squib.
No, I'm learning along with the rest of
Yeah,
our
I hope
listeners on a
so.
lot of this.
Well, and hopefully this information comes off as actually something people can learn from and not just me ranting into a microphone.
No, it's not bad. It's not bad.
But so I feel like we can kind of move on now into what Remington 700s we own. I say we. Do you own any 700 Squib?
No, Squib does not own a 700. It's not because I don't like them.
Do you want one?
Yes. And honestly, after this talk so far, I've wanted one more now. I have my list of guns I'm trying to get in order.
Yeah.
Oh, we might have bumped one or two. We'll see. Might have bumped one or two for a 700 now.
I feel like you would love a vintage Remington 700, like 70s, 80s
Oh yeah.
vintage in some oddball cartridge.
Oh, don't tell me oddball now. I'd get something very mainstream. The
Really?
oddballest I'd get is probably a 300 Win Mag because honestly, my heart
Man,
says I want it in
that's
308.
not oddball at all.
See,
Ugh.
I'm kind of vanilla when it comes to my cartridges because I like the availability.
And see, I like the collectability, and this is
Mhm.
our personalities clashing
Yep.
again. Because I'm the collector, and you kind of shoot more than I do.
I stock ammo for the end of the world. You stock ammo to put on
It's
paper.
going to be tough to stock some of these cartridges we're going to go over.
Exactly.
So, some of the 700s that are in the collection right now, on my end of things, of course, I am going to bring up my Remington 700 300 Win Mag. Came up
Hmm.
earlier in the episode. We've talked about that in prior ones. Uh,
Sexy gun.
SPS, stainless, special purpose synthetic.
Hmm.
Fantastic rifle. We have one in 17 Remington. Great cartridge, I think. 17 is tough to reload. but it's very pleasant to shoot. We have them in the classic cartridges, 223 Remington and 308 Winchester.
Mm-hmm.
Very classy guns. We have one in 6mm Remington, Squid.
Not something you see a lot of on the shelf.
Yes, and I am going to pop quiz you here.
Oh boy.
Do you know where that cartridge comes from? By chance? Parent cartridge.
8 millimeter Mauser.
Technicality, I don't remember if it was the 7 or the 8. It
Okay.
comes from the Mauser
So
family.
okay, all right.
I'm fairly certain it's from the 7x57
That
Mauser,
was a lucky guess on Squib's part here.
but I don't think it really matters because 8mm Mauser goes to 7mm Mauser. You can get to 6mm Remington,
Mm-hmm.
also known as the 244. Cool name, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they should have kept it, but it was kind of a lead balloon when it was released.
Yeah.
And then the only two others I could think of were a 204 Ruger,
Mm-hmm.
which is a nice cartridge to
Great
shoot,
round.
especially out here, very popular,
Mm-hmm.
and a 243 Winchester,
My first ever deer rifle caliber.
which for Missouri whitetail hunting is like creme de la creme.
Is that enough power for those monsters down there?
Yes. Yes,
Really?
yes, it is. Yep. I
Wow.
shot my first deer with a 243.
Yeah. I just for the listeners that
Yeah.
don't know, go Google some Missouri deer.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what's in the water down there with you guys, but they get ridiculous.
Yeah. So 243, and that was in a Winchester models, not a Winchester, a Remington Model 7.
Okay.
And so a 7 was a smaller action, kind of a smaller rifle. Pretty sure it was a Model 7. I'll text my dad after this and make sure it was a Model 7.
Tell them hi for me.
I will. I will. But some of the different qualities of rifle, you could order these from Remington. And if you're an FFL, you could order all different kinds of factory models. They
Mhm.
also had a custom shop. You could get all kinds of different sub models. These include the classic ADL, the BDL, and the CDL versions.
Mhm.
And it's not commercial driver's license.
Are you
No,
sure?
no laugh.
Are you sure
Okay.
it's not?
I'm sure. Yeah, we have it in the notes. The ADL, Average Deluxe Line, which I think is the worst name because, like, average
Average deluxe.
deluxe.
It's like a base model
Yeah.
Cadillac.
You have the BDL, also known as the Better Deluxe Line. Also, come on, Remington, better names, please.
That is horrible naming on
The
their part.
difference between the two, the big difference, I will say, floor plate on the BDL, no floor plate on the ADL.
Now, what's the average price difference? Do you know off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I would say that you could probably get an ADL from Walmart if they were still coming out with
Right.
700s.
As opposed to like the CDL I have sitting on my shelf.
Well, the CDL, that was kind of more you didn't so like FFLs would order BDLs by
Hmm.
the tens. The CDLs, FFLs would order by the ones and twos.
Yeah, I have one at the shop right now. I forget what it's even chambered in, but man, that's a good looking rifle.
And so that's the CDL stands for Classic Deluxe Line,
Well,
which
they nailed it on the head with
yeah,
that
I'll
one.
pass them on that.
Yeah,
That was their fancier model. So better design aspects. And I would just say generally the QC between these three models, as you go from A, B, C, it gets better.
right. Well, just like you said, the ADL is something you can pick up from Walmart. And for people that
Yeah.
aren't aware, a lot of firearms manufacturers have special lines of guns for Walmart.
Yep.
The Henry you buy from me as an FFL dealer is not the Henry you buy from Walmart. And put them side by side, you will start feeling and seeing the differences.
Now there are also good sides to that. Cabela's has specific lines with manufacturers like Savage.
Hmm.
Savage put forward a Model 12 FV that is a Cabela's exclusive. And I am so upset at Savage because they do not make them in 223 and 22 250 or 204 Ruger anymore. They just make
Mm.
them in 308 and 65 Creedmoor.
That 6.5 is just, man, it's elbowing everybody out of the market, feels like.
Well, I I collect them. I collect the Model 12s specific to Cabela's. I collect those guns specifically.
Hmm.
And it frustrated me so much because what guns do I own? I own the 308 and I own the 65 Creedmoor. And
Right.
then they took out the 223, the 204 Ruger, and the 22 250. So
Hmm.
all things aside, you also have, I mean, the list of submodels for the Remington 700 almost endless. Just a ridiculous number of rifles. Of course, 1960, what did I say, 1964, 1962. If it came out in that year, Lord knows they're going to come out with anything and everything.
Yeah.
Some examples: the special purpose synthetic that I own in 300 Win Mag. It's a synthetic stock. special purpose synthetic stock. That's kind of the way you think of that.
And that's kind of the one that people might have seen in movies in like a SWAT scenario or whatever.
And
I've
I
seen
would
those in a lot of
and I would
films.
argue to say that's probably the most common.
Hmm.
Their stock style in the 700.
Yeah, well, and in this modern day, everybody wants a lighter weapon. Everybody doesn't want to hike with an extra 2 pounds of wood or something. So that synthetic is that's the way a lot of the
I
market's
guess
going.
so.
I still prefer a wood stock
I do
bolt
too.
action.
Another variant that I had to bring up apparently was the varmint laminated stock, the VLS series.
I've never seen one of these come through the shop. I would love to see one.
Varmint profile barrel,
Mhm.
so it's a thick one. Uh,
It's a thick one.
almost almost bench style. You could probably use it for bench.
Hmm.
Laminated wood stock, I think, looks very attractive. I think we own the 204 Ruger in that cartridge, in that line. I think so. But again, you could get so many different submodels from 700s. You will probably almost always have to find them on the used rack
Hmm.
because I think Remington started kicking out 700s, but they're probably only kicking out ADLs, BDLs, and maybe some SPSs.
Hmm.
Very limited models, I assume. I have no idea. But that's actually a really good transition. We're going to talk about some of the legal challenges, Squib, and this is a sad story.
It is never a good thing when a gun manufacturer is sued, in my opinion. I mean, there have been issues with just about every manufacturer in the world having some lawsuit against them for one thing or another. But man, this one wrecked.
Yeah, because I love Remington 700s.
Hmm.
And obviously, since we own so many and so many different cartridges, it was a benchmark in the 1900s. So it's very unfortunate to see one of the big guys go down.
Hmm.
They were first lawsuited in 2014 for triggers, their infamous trigger issue. Guns going off without touching the triggers.
Just
Uh,
what every gun owner wants to happen.
oh my gosh. And come to think of it, we had a 40X in 22 long rifle. 40X is a different Remington. It's like a single shot 700. They
Hmm.
call it a 40X and 22 long rifle. And I had not a negligent discharge. I had a trigger issue on that one.
Hmm.
And it didn't click until I saw the lawsuit come out. 2006 to 2014, if I did my research right, they were criticized for having bad QC on their triggers, and so they were sued. A lot of negligent discharges. I say negligent. They were bad triggers.
And this is one of those things we'll cover in a later episode about buying used firearms.
Yeah,
It is maybe not imperative depending on the model, but it's a good idea to look up that model and that serial and see when it was manufactured.
what
Because,
kind
like
of
Bucket
issues?
said, these 2006 to 2014 models, if I had one come through the shop and I'm going to look it up at that, I'm going to see if it's been, recalled or anything like that.
And the recall is a big thing. If you're in a used shop and you know that you're buying a Remington 700 from 2006 to 2014, you have no idea if it was recalled.
Yeah.
I mean, it was recalled, but you don't know if it was sent into Remington
Right.
to get it fixed. And that was a risk I didn't even realize I was walking into with my 300 Win Mag, which I got super lucky on that one.
Yeah.
I think that's an early 2000s vintage. I say vintage a lot, but
The
I,
fact that we call the early 2000s vintage makes me feel
oh my
very
God,
old.
I was,
I think you just gave me another gray hair.
I think so.
Thanks.
But I got really lucky with the 300 Win Mag. So that is something to watch out when you're buying used firearms. Now, they got hit with a second lawsuit, Squiv. And this
Hmm.
one was actually through Bushmaster.
Ironic, consider I'm wearing a Bushmaster t-shirt today.
He is wearing his Bush. He came prepared, folks. He's wearing his Bushmaster shirt.
Yeah, my 50th anniversary exclusive cool guy
Yeah.
shirt.
So Bushmaster was owned by Remington, and in 2015, I think it was, they got sued because a Bushmaster rifle was being used in a mass shooting,
Hmm.
Sandy Hook.
Hmm.
That was a very bad day.
It was a very sad event. I mean,
Yes.
it is a great tragedy in our nation. We're not
Yes.
going to, downplay that at all.
So between the Bushmaster lawsuit and the Trigger lawsuit in 2014 and 2015, their bankruptcy was imminent. Like it happened because they had to pay out a lot of money because they did
Hmm.
lose the Bushmaster lawsuit and they lost the Trigger lawsuit. The amount of money they had to pay out was ridiculous. So they were declared bankrupt or they declared bankruptcy, and then their assets were sold off. Bushmaster's owned by someone else.
I forget who bought them. I
I
really should have looked
totally
that
I
up.
don't know. Maybe I should have researched it for this episode, but I have no idea who bought Bushmaster.
But they are in operation again.
They're still making
Yep.
rifles.
They moved and now they are a whole new
Yes.
operation. And so as many of our listeners know from our a couple of our previous episodes, I'm a Bushmaster fanboy. So I was glad to see that they got back on their feet.
Yeah. So Remington itself got split, and this is where I think some people don't realize Remington got split between their ammo company and their firearm company. So Remington Ammunition Factory, I don't remember if they're the ones that actually got bought out, but they make the ammunition side of things, obviously. Remington cord locked, Remington shotgun shells, all made by Remington, and then their guns were restructured. Their firearm division was restructured into Rem Arms, and they're finally kicking out Remington 700s and 783s, I think, which is their economy model. So the new 700s, they look the same as the old ones. And what I think is kind of a laughable moment, and not laughing, it made me chuckle. They outsourced their triggers.
To who?
I have it in my notes here. Who did they?
I mean, I can see outsourcing stocks. I can maybe see
Yeah.
outsourcing barrels, but
Well, but at the same time, they kind of needed to outsource the trigger, right? Because
yeah,
they got sued for their triggers.
yeah, that's a
So, I
good
mean,
point.
if you're being sued for your trigger and then you say you fixed the problem and you kick out guns again, isn't the first thing people are going to wonder is like, let's test this trigger?
Yeah, it's easier to blame another company.
Timney.
Okay.
Timney is making the triggers. Now,
Props to Rem Arms.
I don't think you're going to get the same Timney trigger in your Remington 700 as you would in their famous drop in AR-15 triggers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. But I think Timney, being a very reputable company, making a very good product, was a genius move for Rem Arms
Yeah, I can't think
moving
of another
forward.
trigger company that they would have been better off going with. I can't think of anybody else that I
I
would rather
have
have.
bought so many triggers from another company, and for some reason, they're just not in my head right now.
That's because Timney's prettier.
Well, and more expensive.
That's what makes them prettier.
But that's the other thing too, is you're buying. I think they kept the same selling price for the Remington 700. They're I think they're staying around 750. I was checking on Gunbroker earlier today,
Hmm.
and the new 700s are keeping around 750 for buy now on Gunbroker.
Not a terrible number, in my
No,
opinion.
no, I think that's very competitive, and I think some people will buy them just for A, the romanticism, and B, uh, what they used to be and what they are now. Because I do think they've fixed their issues. I really hope I don't live to eat those words. But if they fix their issues, 750 bucks, I could very well see the value in buying Remington 700 nowadays.
Absolutely. I mean, unless you're really hard up for it and if you have the ability to go buy a new bolt action rifle like that, that's not a bad price to get into. That
Yeah.
plus an optic, you could have a tack driver for an 800-yard gun pretty easy, it seems like.
Yes. They are bringing their 783 back, as I mentioned. That's their budget model. I don't know what they're going for yet.
Now, couldn't you maybe educate me a little bit?
Yes.
What are going to be some of those value things they do to the 783 as opposed to the 700?
So this is actually a funny story with 783. It was a Marlin bolt action rifle,
Okay.
and then Remington bought out Marlin,
Hmm.
and then changed the name on the gun from Marlin to Remington, and then they called it the 783.
So you're buying a Marlin that says Remington.
Essentially, it's a like a Marlin design bolt rifle.
That, depending on the price savings, wouldn't probably upset me.
No, I think you should expect the same quality as your Savage Axis.
Okay.
I would probably say more along the lines of the Ruger American.
That sounds like a $400 to $600 gun to me.
I hope so. I hope they don't deviate from that.
Mhm.
I'm still kind of salty that Ruger Americans are $550, $600.
Yeah, they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't.
I'm gonna say that
I
they
will,
shouldn't
and you
be.
can just
Yeah,
blast me in the comments.
get
I don't
mad at me all
care.
you want. That's a $400 gun to me.
If that, it's just the stock, you know.
That stock is wimpy.
Yeah. Well, and so the 783, you're going to get a wimpy stock too.
Okay.
And again, it's going to have a Timney trigger.
Which that
Technically, in the 783, it's going to have a Timney
pretty
trigger
awesome.
if it's a Timney trigger.
Yeah,
If
I'd want to do
it's
some research on that.
and not their economy trigger.
Right.
What they decide, it's like, yes, you'll get a Henry from Walmart. It's not going to be the same Henry
No,
you get from an FFL.
no, it's not.
And same case for Timney. You'll get a Timney
Yep.
trigger.
We're gonna get
It's
blasted for that too. My
ah
Henry from Walmart's just as good. Bring it out and
whatever,
I'll shoot it next to mine and we'll see.
whatever. I don't buy guns from Walmart. The manager's never there. That's the only person that they're allowed to sell
The only thing
guns.
I buy from Walmart in their guns department, honestly, I do buy some ammunition there.
Yeah,
Their 22 long rifle, they're 30-30, and they're 22 250 because that's the only places I could find the latter two.
yeah. I need to buy that 22 bucket of ammo. Just haven't gotten around to it yet. $90 for like 1,600 rounds.
That's a pretty good deal.
And I went to Dunham's and it's like 180 for that same bucket. Granted, Dunham's, by the way, people, Dunham's price scalps
Oh yeah.
1,000%.
Oh yeah.
1,000%. Ruger Americans at Dunham's right now, $750 square.
Goodness.
I am not joking.
The only reason I don't go there anymore, I go there to buy golf balls.
Yeah,
But outside of that, I can't ever get anybody to find anybody to unlock the dang ammo case.
yeah,
So I'm like, okay, well,
they're
I don't
never
want to
there.
pay your overpriced ammo prices anyways, I guess.
And back in the day, I had a 7 Mauser, a Czech VZ24, and I had to go find a box of 7 Mauser. Dunham's was the only place in our town that had it. $55 a box for Remington core locks. And I am not paying $55 a box for Remington core locks in 7 Mauser.
No, that's like
I won't do
Browning
it.
trophy grade ammo
No,
prices.
I won't do it. So, a little shout out to Dunham's there. Hey, but with wrapping up with the 700, not to say that we're wrapping up, but the value for the collectors out there that are listening, hopefully, the value of this gun, if you're buying a used firearm that's a Remington 700, it's very much dependent on the caliber. In the same sense that the number of 30-06s they made in the Remington 700, astronomical.
Yeah, well, that's what Squib will probably be buying because he'll find one
Oh,
cheap.
come on.
Means I don't have to diversify the ammo I'm already buying.
Buy a 308 Remington 700 and rebarrel it to something cool, like 6 GT or
You say that like it's something I'm gonna stock up on for the apocalypse. I can't do that, Buck.
it's almost like you have a friend who reloads.
Oh, in this very garage.
Oh my
I
gosh.
thought that was just a coat rack over there. My bad.
But anyways, the number of 17 Remington Fireball, also known as the 17 Mach 4, the number of guns they made in that cartridge, significantly less. So you can find these rifles. I've seen them at auction go for over 2 grand,
Really?
depending on the cartridge.
Collectors are weird.
Well, if you can't find a 17 Mach 4, and they're mostly in Remington 700s, unless
That is still
someone
the coolest
wildcats.
name ever. 17 Mach 4.
Yeah, I really like. I refuse to call it the 17 Remington Fireball. It is a commercialized case, technically.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse to call it 17 Remington Fireball. It's 17 Mach 4.
Yeah, 17 Mach 4. We're gonna try to
Yeah.
push her to Mach 5.
So I mean, that's a good way to put it. Where the 17 Remington Fireball, maybe that's the one that goes for $2,200 at auction.
Mm-hmm.
The 30-06, you're looking at seven, $800, maybe, depending on the wood. Is it synthetic? Is there a
Mm-hmm.
scope on it? That sort of thing. Also, serial number with these kinds of rifles, it's very important, especially like we said before. If it's in that 2006 2014 range, you got to know.
Do a Google, people. Go
And
to Reddit,
well,
give it a Google. It's worth your 5 minutes of your time looking through a spreadsheet.
and Remington has not on their website, but there is a decoding key for the serial number
Oh, that's
for
nice.
Remington receivers.
A lot of companies don't do that, and I like that
No,
they do that.
well, especially nowadays. That was kind of common practice in the 1900s. Thank goodness, especially with World War rifles. That was kind of the practice, is you
Mm-hmm.
can look up, what serial numbers were made in this year. You can do that with Remington and kind of figure out when yours was made. That is a detractor for the value. If you're buying one from 2006 to 2014 and you don't know if it's been recalled, that does affect the value. Because,
I would almost argue. I mean, this is just my personal opinion.
yeah,
I probably wouldn't touch one. I probably just wouldn't buy
really.
one.
See, with a compatibility for 700 parts, Remington 700 parts, I would have no problem buying
If you're
one.
going to keep it factory and if you aren't ready to swap that trigger, I wouldn't buy one. Now, if you're cool buying a new trigger and putting a new trigger in it, maybe different.
2 screws.
See, it's
Yeah.
doable.
As long as you have the money to buy the gun and the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue.
Yeah, because that trigger's going to run you what? How much you think?
Oh gosh, I can't even answer that because I don't even have. I've never replaced a 700 trigger and
Mm,
I've never looked at them before. All the triggers I look at are ARs,
I gotcha.
AR triggers.
That's my boy.
Well, I've built what I needed to build. Um, Great guns.
Absolutely. A lot of history around them. Just tons of stuff.
There's so much packed around one model, and this is why I kind of wanted to bring it as one of our main themes for some of our talks is just surround a model with what it's done, where it's been.
So maybe
Uh,
you want to go on Gunbroker and buy one now.
yeah, well, and hopefully that's the idea. I've wanted so Squib. I've been really looking at 300 blackouts lately.
Hmm.
Most people will want a 300 blackout in an AR platform.
You have to put a can on it.
I want a bolt gun
Are you
in
gonna
300
put? Are you
blackout.
gonna put a can on it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
cool.
I
All
will
right.
give you that. You
All right.
don't
We're
buy,
cool.
I will say, you don't buy a 300 blackout so you can't put a can on it,
I would. Well, some people do
which is
mistakenly.
weird.
It's wrong.
Who buys it to go supersonic? I want a 220 grain pill going at 1,000 feet per second. Thank you.
Quietly.
But I want a bolt gun
All right.
in 300 blackout. So I think, and Remington or Rem Arms, if you're listening, please, 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 please release a 16-inch threaded barrel 300 blackout Remington 700 or Remington Model 7.
It seems like whenever a company comes out with a weapon that is a threaded barrel, a week later I see it on YouTube with testing 5 different cans on that weapon. So I would love to see that as an option from them.
And I would hope that just in the firearms industry in general, it would start being more common practice or just like standard.
Hmm.
Just thread the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a break, my plan is to put a flash hider, like the three prong, like
Really?
the
Yeah.
M14 or the M1A, not the bird
Hmm.
cage, but like the three prong,
Yeah.
um, or the bird cage, maybe the long bird cage, the
Hmm.
cool bird cage, not the
Be
short
awesome.
stubby one.
That looks snazzy.
Put that on the end of a bolt gun and then have it externally threaded to accept a suppressor.
Oh,
And so, I can run just
right.
the flash hider if I wanted to,
Give
but
yourself some options.
you can also throw on the can. That's like my goal. So I'd love. I was shopping for a Remington Model 7 receiver today
Hmm.
and a 700 receiver to see kind of what my options were. I will say the big thing with Rem Arms, they're not selling actions yet, which I think is probably. I get why. I really wanted to see them uh, release some actions though.
Our search history for our gun brokers could not be more opposite.
Really? Are
Oh
you
God, yeah.
searching like AR-15s?
No, CZ75 compacts today.
Oh, pistols.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, when it comes to rifles, even then, because you're looking up 30-06s and
I was looking.
Winchester Model
I was,
70s like the
from
old
me
person
texting you
you
this weekend,
are.
I was looking up M1A SOCOMs too,
Ah,
which
great rifles.
I put that out of my head, thankfully, for now.
I just don't want to put a scout scope on it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah,
I really don't.
that's kind of the deciding factor on that one.
That was a big part of it, and
Yeah.
the cost of magazines is a little ridiculous unless you get the USGIs.
So yeah, I would also consider putting a laminate stock on a 700 or a Model 7.
Absolutely.
Those are attractive.
Hmm.
I would love to put exhibition grade maple or walnut,
Hmm.
but at that point, is it shootable?
Well, and it
Or am
seems
I
like
worried about denting the wood?
yeah, it seems like 700s are kind of I'm gonna use this term. People are gonna crucify me for it, but the Honda Civic of bolt actions.
Oh
By
no,
by
I'm gonna
that
crucify you for that.
by that I mean
What?
there are an immense amount of options for customization. If you want a certain kind of wood from Africa, or you want a certain color of whatever, you have the option to buy it for the 700. There's a company out there that's going to make exactly what you're looking for. You're going to be able to customize that 700 to exactly what you want.
At the same time, that's because Bergara has the same footprint,
Mm-hmm.
Howa has the same footprint,
Mm-hmm.
all those custom actions we mentioned
Mm-hmm.
have the same footprint.
But I think a lot of people in this modern market, they're looking for that customization for their own personal
Right.
gun. They want the options like, what, I want to go with
But
Coca-Cola wood,
the
whatever.
reason there are options is because as a manufacturer, you can make one line of products that match that footprint, and suddenly you're making products for 5 different commercial rifles
Mm-hmm.
and 10 different custom actions. So I get why manufacturers are still making a bunch of 700 parts,
Mm-hmm. As they should.
as they should.
I think we're going to see that rifle in this country still being used for the next 100 years. I'm going to
I
call it right now.
I will be curious to see how the rise of Rem Arms is received.
Mm-hmm.
They need to start making actions because right now you're looking at an $800 to $1,000 action, and it's going to be custom because Remington 700s. They're not making receivers, or they're not selling by the receiver. You can't get them anymore.
Mm.
So they need to come out with that because $550 versus $1,000, and the $550 is going to buy you a trigger. The trigger comes with that. $1,000 for a custom action that doesn't include a trigger. It's not a red flag for me because you're buying a custom action, but it's like, man, I really don't want to dish out $450 more than my Remington 700 option and then still have to buy a trigger
Right, absolutely.
for 275, $300, however much it costs to put a trigger on one of those.
I look forward to seeing how they progress as a company in the next 5 years.
It'll be curious.
I think this 5 year mark, or circle back to the Remington 700 in 5 years and
Mm,
see what it's doing.
yeah,
Hopefully, it's still hopefully some of the things we covered in this episode are going to be more out there. You're going to be able to buy those actions on their own. You're going to be able to have more options for triggers and whatnot outside of those Timities.
yeah.
I think we're going to see that hopefully.
I would love to see them put up their Model 7 again, re release the Model 7 to go up against the Howa 1500 mini action,
Hmm.
which is primarily in 223 and 300 blackout. I can't remember if they made them in 308, but the Howa mini action, put up your Remington Model 7 because Remington Model 7 was a great rifle. We have one in 22 250 and it flat shoots. Wonderful guns. But I will be following the 700 as it progresses with Rem Arms as they start making more rifles. I will be following reviews specifically because I really want this gun to succeed.
Hmm.
I think they've kind of transitioned into an underdog position because they've been out of the game from their lawsuits and bankruptcy, going through all the procedures. They've kind of had to put making guns on the back burner to take care of their stuff. So now they're coming into a market with Franke Momentums, Howa rifles. Weatherby has their new 307, which I think is dangerously valuable
Hmm.
in terms of how much value they packed into that gun. On the other side of that, Weatherby Vanguards, the economical rifles have never looked better
Right.
nowadays.
Yeah.
And now Remington 700s are trying to squeeze their way back into the market.
Right. The bang for your buck on a bolt action in these days is fantastic, whether
Yeah.
off the shelf or on the used market.
Yep. So that'll be a big challenge for Ram Arms. I would challenge them. Hopefully, I want them to listen to this. I don't know how far we'll get, but hey,
I hope we get an angry email. It's like, don't badmouth us
we
again,
won't.
Squib.
Ram
Buck's
Arms, if you'd
cool.
like us to handle some Remington 700s for the podcast, we'll go out and shoot them.
Oh, we'll punch those puppies out as far as we
Oh
can.
man, we have the ammo and we
Mm.
have the optics. So, Ram Arms, if you're listening, hook us up.
If you build it, we will come.
Indeed. So, just to wrap up, Squib, that's kind of the Remington 700. We kind of talked about where it came from, where it is now, what's happened in between,
And
all
hopefully where it's going.
hopefully where it's going,
Hmm.
all the crazy stuff it was chambered for.
Hmm.
And you can get, I mean, there are some crazier cartridges that I'm not thinking of that Remington made, or someone grabbed an action and made a barrel for it.
Hmm.
So, take a look at the auctions. Don't flinch at Remington 700s. Do a little research, though, into their serial numbers and see kind of where they were made.
Hmm.
Uh, See if they have an aftermarket trigger. That'll make you chuckle a little bit
Yep.
because you'll know from this episode.
Why'd you swap the trigger in your Remington 700? Now you know.
You know why. So, anyways, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in to Buck's Garage Podcast. If you feel like you want to support our content and want to follow for more, feel free to click that subscribe button and the notification bell. Those are you listening on Spotify because we are on Spotify, Squid.
Hmm.
Sorry, you can follow us through Patreon, though. We only have one tier right now, a $5 per month tier. Until we get some more seasons uploaded, some more content uploaded, we can upgrade our Patreon page. But until then, anything you donate through Patreon goes through to the podcast to make better content for you guys, more subjects available to us. I'd like to get to a point where we can talk about some gun reviews, some optics reviews,
Hmm.
kind of buy some content.
If we get 5,000 Patreon subscribers, Buck and I will go take a Remington 700 out to Alaska and shoot a moose. Maybe.
I like it.
Boom.
Let's make it happen.
5,000 subscribers on Patreon. We're going to go shoot a moose in
We will have
Alaska.
to think about some because I do want to do not a competition, but like a benchmark.
Hmm.
If we get, let's say, 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, because we are on YouTube if you are listening on Spotify, kind of cover all our bases here.
Hmm.
If you are listening through Spotify, we do have YouTube. If you are on YouTube, we are going to try and do some sort of benchmarking. If we hit 1,000 subscribers or however many, even 100, honestly, I'd be happy with. Might do some sort of giveaway. So,
That'd be fantastic.
yeah, stay tuned for that. Until then, do some push-ups, buy magazines. I'm going to add that in there, Squib.
Hmm.
We're kind of still feeling out our outro, but
Oh yeah.
that's okay. Buy
I'm
some
I'm gonna say
magazines.
do some push-ups, change
Yeah,
your socks, eat some bananas.
bananas, potassium.
I'm a big 3 banana a day guy.
Oh, are you?
Oh yeah, monkey never cramp. If
Mm,
people go to YouTube and look up monkey never cramp, you'll understand.
that's a great clip as a baseball player.
Hmm.
So, all right. Well, until next time, Squib, we'll see you on the next episode.
Have a good night, Buck.